Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now in today's episode we're going to be looking at what is expected of you for your control assessment, how your assessment is going to be judged, and what we're going to be doing for you guys at the channel to support you throughout the entire process. Okay, so I've heard a lot of questions from a few of you who've either sent me emails to my school account or who have contacted me via the channel to talk about what kind of things are expected of them. And I've tried to answer that up here in some of the notes that I've made. First things first, the controlled assessment I will refer to as the NEA, which is its technical term, and from now on I'll talk about it as the NEA, so just be aware of that. Second, all materials in a school workshop can be used to make your final practical with. So if you're studying paper and boards or a graphics style course, you can use polymers, plastics, timbers, woods, just as much as anyone else. Equally, if you're a timber student, you can use some of the products that the paper and boards courses would use. Or if you're using fibre and textiles, same thing applies. You're not limited in your controlled assessment, your NEA, to one particular chosen material area. Of course, because you're a specialist in that area, you can hone your skills there, but it's up to you. You can use any material in a school workshop. 3. The rules have been changed for the cohort 2020-2021. So if you're in year 10 now and you're moving into year 11 in September, the rules for the Edexcel GCSE DT course have been relaxed so that you are now allowed to use time spent at home to complete your folder work. In the past, you had to do all coursework had to be in the classroom with a teacher present to monitor the work. The exception and still remaining rule of thumb here is that the practical work must still be completed in a school workshop, and it has to be under direct supervision of a classroom teacher. That work will then still, like usual, have to be locked away at the end of each session. Now, regarding the practical, you do have to complete and produce a working, fully functioning model of your chosen design. So, for example, if you were creating a product that was like a seating area, then the product has to be life-size and it has to be able to seat people. So whatever you design or create, it has to fully function. So if you're saying this product's going to have lights on it that flash and do this and that, the product has to have those lights on it that do this and that. So bear that in mind. Whatever you say you're going to design and make, you have to design and make, and it must be fully functioning. Okay, so let's get started in the video, and I'll go through some tips of what I'm expecting this week completed and what the next steps will be for next week. Let's get started. Okay, so if you missed any of that, then hit pause now and you can go through that at your own time and your own pace. For everybody else, we're going to have a look at the mind map that we should have started last week on the 1st of June. If you are struggling with that mind map, and for those of you that have started the mind map, here's a few tips or a few subheadings to help support you with that process. Now, a few of you might be thinking, oh crumbs, there's loads of options there in that contextual challenge. I haven't got a clue what to pick. My mind's all over the place. Whereas some others might be thinking, yeah, and I'm going to do this, I'm going to design that, and that's where I'm going to go down that avenue, and that's fine. But for everybody, we need to be having a look at these particular areas to help support you. Now, I can't go into the details and go through this like I was creating my own version, because that would be me compartmentalizing you and leading you down an avenue, and we need to keep this as broad as possible so that you guys at home can create some fantastic practicals and projects. So my guidance here is use these subheadings to help support you with your mind mapping of your ideas. Now, of course, you're going to have ideas anyway, and add those into the mix, the melting pot of design ideas, and then they'll help generate things. Now, what we're after with this, what the goal of this mind map is to generate questions. Now, those questions are going to form the backbone of your course. They're going to form the backbone in the sense that you're going to need to answer some of these questions, and those questions will need to be answered through the form of research. Okay, so we'll move around clockwise, starting at the top, material choices. Now, of course, you can then start to mind map things like, okay, well, I've got metals, I could use polymers. I could use timbers. I could use paper and boards. And for each one of those, you might go, okay, well, what exists out there in the world at the moment? And you might do a little bit of research then and there, or you might use your existing knowledge to sort of point out a few things. So you might talk about things like stainless steel. And then you might branch off and go, well, okay, it doesn't rust. Therefore, it's waterproof. You might also identify that it's expensive. And that it's hard to source. Hard to find in a workshop anyway. You see how I branch off from each one of those? Well, you could do the same thing. You could go through all the different metals. You can go through aluminium. You could look at things like precious metals even. Not that you would add those necessarily, but it's something to look at in a mind map and go, okay, well, if I was making this for real, I might use elements of some kind of a gold shape or a gold colour. I might not use gold, but I might want to find out how much it costs, how easy is it to get hold of, is it something viable, can I use it? The same thing, excuse me for banging the mic, same thing for the polymers, same thing for the different types of timbers. You might want to look at man-made boards, you might want to look at the differences between deciduous and coniferous trees, so hardwoods and softwoods. You might go, well, okay, well, I could use the softwoods, they have an opener grain and they tend to be a little bit cheaper, easy to find, but I really want that oak finish. And you might go, okay, well, I've got oak, I've got pine, so this one's cheaper, but I could stain it, so I could look at stains to look like oak. So they're options that you've got ahead of you, so you can look into these details, do a little bit of research into the materials you might want to use, have a look at what already exists in the world. Often you'll find that materials use a variety to create something, a product that actually has various different types of textures to it. There's another thing there as well to think about and consider is texture. So how's this product going to feel? Do I need to grip something? If I need to grip it, do I want that to be quite a rubberized texture? Do I want it to have grooves in it? So lots of things to play about with there. Moving around, different technologies. What already exists? So having a look down here, we've got things like fingerprint. And when I say look down here, I'm looking at the exercise books. Fingerprint scanners. Now, of course, if you're designing a product that's for the environment and it has nothing to do with fingerprint scanners, don't put fingerprint scanners in there. That's self-explanatory. But what technology already exists that is unique and that could be used potentially for your practical things like smart materials maybe? And again, you could branch that off. So you could look at polymorphs. You could look at shape memory alloys. They're options that you could use. We can find them in a school workshop. We can have access to some of these. Next thing down the line is form. Now this one is really important. This is to do with the shape of your product, and it is often the bugbear of designers. We tend to either go for this one or we go for this one, and we call that form over function or function over form. So essentially what we've got here is the function is the job, what it's got to do, and then you've got the shape. So a good example of that is products that look really pretty and they're really expensive and they do the job kind of well, but they are products where the form is prioritized over the job, its function. And other times you'll get things like the function over the form, which is where you get an ugly product that works really, really well but doesn't look very good. And often there is a balance, there's a divide between the designers. Some go for one, some go for the other. Whichever you decide is entirely up to you, but we're going to look at form to begin with, just to start off with. So shape. So it might be that if you were doing it for a zoo as an example, so this is just my example. If we were looking at zoos and we were looking at animals, we might want to look at the habitat. Do they have cages? Where do they sleep? You might want to look at what kind of animal, so it might be monkeys. What food do they eat? And you could do this for everything, so you could look at lions. And then the form that you could go, well, okay, well, the product could be shaped like a banana, for example. It could be shaped like one of the cages that they sleep in. Or it could look like, I don't know, some kind of, it could have the shape of, that's a monkey. I don't know why it's got no arms, but you get the idea. So the form of whatever that product is has a direct impact on what it's going to look like. So that's just an example. So if it was cinema, it could be movie themed. If it's environment, it could be environment themed. But the shape of your product has a big impact on the form. Okay. Biomimicry, one of my favorites. Now, biomimicry is essentially products created from / inspired by nature. So if you think of things as an example of a spiral staircase, it does that, and then the stairs go around all the way like that. So there's my spiral staircase. If I just add this little guy in here and this little guy in here, we end up with a snail or a sea urchin. And that is biomimicry. It is things that are created to resemble the real life counterpart in nature. And that's something you might want to explore as well when you're doing your coursework. How can your products be inspired by nature? And especially if you're doing something that's related around nature, biomimicry might be something you want to investigate in further detail. Next, going around here, we've got sustainability. So you might want to look at how can products be recycled, and how can products be reused. So there are a couple of options there for you to think about, and sustainability is a massive part of the world right now, especially if you're choosing a theme that directly looks at sustainability issues around the world. But again, even there, I'm posing questions that are straight off the bat, sustainability. So I don't know much about how I can recycle timbers. I don't know much about how I can reuse smart materials. So use these as picking points to go off and look at different areas. So how can I recycle? How can I recycle polymorph? How can I use timbers? Depending on which type of product you're going to try and make. Sizes is the last thing we will look at there, and we want to look at a couple of things here: the dimensions of existing products, and that might be where we look at existing products. What works well? What can be improved? So head on out, have a look. What's already out there? If we were doing a product on the cinema, for example, what already do people use? What product do people use to do that? Do they use advertisement? Do they use colour? Do they use shape? Do they use form? Do they use the function? How do they already exist? What works? What doesn't work? What would you improve? So start criticising those kind of things. Mindmap sizes. How big should the product be? A couple of things to look at there. One, ergonomics. That looks at how comfy something is. and how it's shaped so people can pick it up and use it nice and easily. And secondly, something to look at is something called anthropometrics, which is the sizes. Let's go to that again so you can read it. Sizes of humans. That's quite an interesting one because that looks at how tall things need to be in relation to the human body. So, quick one for there that you can do at home if you live in a house is that most ceilings are of a standard height when they're built from architecture. So, to get from one floor to the next floor is measured in one place. So, if you wanted to test this, you could climb your stairs at home. Now, it tends to be there are 13 stairs at home to get from the floor to the top. So, go up the stairs and count how many stairs there are. If there are 13, then you know that your house is standardized and anthropometrics was used to create it. That's not always the case, but most times, 9 times out of 10, it will be the case. Equally, the step will be the same height for every stair, and they'll be the same height in your friend's house, as your grandparents' house, as your auntie's house. All the steps will be the same height. Equally, most chairs will be of a certain height so that your legs bend at 90 degrees, so your knees and joints fit properly. So there's something to look at, anthropometrics. How can the product be used to fit the sizes of a human operating or using that product? You wouldn't want a product that I have to pick something up and I can't fit my hands in to grip it and pick something up with. And then lastly, we have the function, what it's going to do, its job. And of course then we can go off and talk about, okay, so how heavy is it going to be? Is it going to have lights on it? Is it going to hinge? Is it going to move? Is it going to fold away? What is it going to do? So talk about its job, offer different spines out there of different ideas. Now, we've spent about 15 minutes on this mind map generating a few different ideas, and we haven't explored hardly any of them. Just think about the kind of mind map you'd create if you explored each one. It might be at home, if you've not got access to A3 paper, you might want to do maybe 1 or 2 of those subheadings per A4 sheet and then bring them all together. It might be that you can write really small and cram them all in one place. You might not want to do a mind map, you might want to do a list instead, or put it in a table if you have access to a computer. All of these are totally good ideas. Okay, so what have we learned in this session? We've learned that the mind map has a few subheadings that will start to create the creative juices flowing, that we don't have to have yet decided which theme we have to make from. We know that the NEA is the control assessment. We've also learnt that we can use any materials for creating our product, that our product has to be made in a school workshop, but the folder work, the work you're doing at home, can be completed at home. So, certainly from my point of view, let's move us back into the home base. What am I expecting from students at my academy? So I'd be expecting from the 8th of June to the end of the week, I'd expect that mind map to be completed in a really nice style. Take your time with it, do a couple of drafts if you need to, but I would expect that to be completed by the end of the week. All of those sections will be explored, some of the research will have started, and that you'll have started to begin to ask questions, and that will start to form research. One way, and you'll be able to see it just up here in the corner, I'll do it in a different colour so you can see. One thing you might want to do is, if you've got a question, you might want to then shade that in a colour so that we can see, oh, that's a question we're going to ask in the research. I need to research this. I need to research into ergonomics. So I might shade that one in. You can identify on there what the questions are, and even maybe on a separate page you might want to have a list of questions. So let's go there. So you might have a question, and then you might go, how can, and then blah, 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 blah. You might want to have another question about what is, and you might want to just write those questions down in a list. So from the mind map, identify some questions. They're going to form your research, and that's going to be part of the backbone of what we do in next week's session, looking at how we research. Okay, if you've got any questions about the control assessment and you're from the Academy, drop them into the comments below. If you're not from the Academy and you've got questions about what to do for the NEA, put them into the comments below. And certainly from the students at the Academy where I work, if you're timbers or paper and boards, I would be expecting you to send an email to your classroom teacher, of course if you've got access to the internet, with a screenshot of your mind map so that they can have a look, and from there we can then offer you further guidance. Now, based on the comments that you leave in the descriptions below, that helps me massively because I can address them at the start of each video and go, okay, well this is what we're getting wrong, this is what we need to do next, or I can say, yeah, that's brilliant, let's add to this, and go from there. Okay, so until the next video, stay safe, and so that you don't miss a video in this crucial time, don't forget to subscribe. Bye now.